What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from Unsleeved Media, and unless you happen to be banned for life with no possibility of appeal, this is one of the more exciting times of the year. This is pre-release week. This coming up week, we have the pre-release for Dominaria, and it's very exciting. I think pre-release is one of the best times, one of the best events outside of Grand Prix. It's a great way for returning players to come back to the game and for new players to give it a try. In general, what you want to remember is that pre-releases are mostly casual, so you shouldn't be too worried about being out of practice or not needing, worrying about having to read the cards, stuff like that. Everyone does. Even the most of the experienced players end up having to read the cards, and we all make mistakes at pre-release. Even seasoned veterans like myself, I make mistakes all the time. So the key is, if you can attend a pre-release, if you are able, and if you have a local game store nearby, I highly recommend attending it. Now here we have Dominaria coming up April 21st and 22nd.
How many times can you rebuild from apocalypse? On Dominaria, we've almost lost count. As we celebrate a world reborn, darkness is growing. Each day wasted brings us closer to ruin.
And there's a few little notes I want to talk about beforehand. There was a small change to the pre-release kit. So as per usual, you get 6 packs, and that is the pool, the card pool you have. You are allowed to use these 6 packs and nothing else from outside the game to build your deck. And that is also your sideboard. So you can sideboard in and out from that card pool. You don't have to have a set sideboard. It's just whatever you opened plus the promo card. And the change I was referencing earlier is we actually now, in this set at least, get 2 promo cards. So you get 1 randomized date-stamped mythic or rare. That's kind of been the norm lately. But you also get 1 randomized date-stamped foil legendary card. And then, of course, you get the insert and the spin down. Some of the bookkeeping I want to get out of the way before I talk about mechanics and things you want to look for is the most important thing when you go into pre-releases to making effective use of your time. You want to, if you can, if you play with sleeves, pre-sleeve your lands or bring them with you and make sure you have more of the exact same kind of sleeve so you can sleeve your deck. I usually go with 15 or so, 15 to 18 lands of each color. And that way, you don't have to fight over lands at the land station. If you've been following my channel for a long time, this is one of the best tips I think I can continue to give out. Because once you open your packs and you're reading cards over, you're going to realize that there's not a ton of time to tweak your deck, build your deck. You kind of just go with the best you can do. And that's the other thing to remember. Pre-release is often, in my opinion, won by the people that, in general, have the most synergistic pulls, the most on-color rares. They open perhaps 2 bombs in their deck, and this is okay. This is the drawback to limited. Don't get too upset if you don't have insane pulls or if you have to scrimp and kind of really stretch your deck out to you end up playing 3 colors instead of 2 because you didn't have enough playables. This happens. Don't let it discourage you, and that's why I often attend multiple pre-releases because one of them I usually get a fair pool and I feel like I'm ready to go. But if you can only attend one, just know going in that, it's random. It's sealed. It's limited play, just like draft, except it's more variance, in my opinion, for sealed because with draft, you can kind of self-select your deck archetype and build around it, where sealed is you just get what you get. So don't sweat it too much. The other thing is I don't think there's a lot of value in obsessing over what cards you want to get or what you want to look for specifically because of this reason. And I'm going to point you to, I think MTG Degree does a good job going over the commons and uncommons that you want to keep an eye out for in the pre-release. I want to focus more on just the event and mentally preparing and things like that. So yes, you want to kind of have an idea of what you want to look for or the type of deck you want to play. But given you have absolutely no control over the cards that you open, I don't think there's a lot of value in agonizing over what you'd love to open or this or that, or the kind of deck you want to play. I've been playing pre-releases, well, until recently, for many years. And in general, here's the methodology I use. Pre-sleeve my lands, open my packs as quickly as possible, and color and CMC sort them. So that means get all your green, red, white, blue, black cards in a row, sorted by least cost to most expensive. And then in most cases, and then you look at your multicolored cards and your artifacts, in most cases, you're going to have 2, maybe 3 piles that are significantly larger and have more playables than the others. And you can generally cut 2 or 3 colors right away without agonizing too much over what kind of deck you want to build. There are some outside scenarios where a card is so very good that you might splash a 3rd color, or you might, play a 4th color just for a card that's so good. But in most cases, in most games that you're going to win at pre-release, it's the person that has a turn, at least. Now, there are some 1-drops in the set that are okay. I generally wouldn't play them, but there are some. If you have a turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4 play, and then into turn 5 on curve, you're probably winning that game in pre-release. Now, there are exceptions, like with everything, but in general, you want to worry about your mana curve. You don't want to have too many 5-drops and not enough 2 and 3-drops, because you're going to be sitting there. By the time you play your 5-drop, you're going to be at 12 life, and your opponent's going to have 3 creatures on the board. So you have to consider that early game. With Sealed, the other thing you want to keep in mind is playing your bombs. Now, a 4/4 Sarah Angel, for example, in draft, probably isn't amazing. It's not bad, but in Sealed, that's like an auto include. 4/4 Flyer is with Vigilance, you're going to play. Just big vanilla fatties, like a 6/7 vanilla creature, is something that I wouldn't play necessarily in draft, but in Sealed, you play it because the games get grindy. And what happens is you end up with a stalemate on the board, and it takes a big creature like that to finally break the stalemate. You want to always consider evasion as an extra value. So if it has First Strike also, that's very powerful. There's some 2 mana, 2 power, 3 mana, 2 power First Strike creatures, 3 power First Strike creatures, very, very strong in combat. Anything with protection from a certain color or flying is the most reasonable way to look at it. If you want to attack in and get damage, you're going to need evasion. So you may want to, mix it. If you have an option between 2 vanilla creatures, I would take the one that costs an extra mana that may also have flying or some sort of evasion. Now, with Dominaria, we have a couple of mechanics and a couple of new card types to consider when we're coming back to the game. So the first big thing I want to talk about is Sagas. Now, these are the new layout card. They're supposed to be like a book. There's a history kind of sub-theme here, or theme, with Dominaria. And if you look at a card like the Flame Keld, you have a Chapter 1, a Chapter 2, a Chapter 3. After the last chapter is over, you discard it. Keep in mind that sagas are, in fact, enchantments. So anything that blows up an enchantment would blow up a saga. And you basically, at the beginning of your upkeep, a lore counter goes on the saga. The effect, whatever happens that chapter, goes on the stack. So if you're going to counter it, if you're going to react to it in any way, you can do it at that time. And then, of course, it reaches its logical conclusion after the second or third chapter, and then it goes away. It's going to look a little funny. It's vertical, but in general, it's just an enchantment that has a different ability, a different thing happen each turn. Now, some actually have the same ability happen in both the first and the second chapter, like History of Benalia. Chapter 1, it creates a 2/2 white knight creature. Chapter 2, it does the same. Chapter 3, knights you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. Mythic level enchantment, it's probably overpowered a little bit. I guess if you had a bunch of knights, it's very powerful. I shouldn't say that. If you build around it, especially in draft, or you happen to open a bunch of knights, this is good. I think you just need to look at the sagas and decide if it's good enough to play. I would say, take care of your creatures first, and take care of your combat tricks and your removal, and then you want to worry about the Sagas. Don't get too sucked in about feeling like you have to play it. At the end of the day, creatures win games in limited play. You're not going to deck your opponent very likely. You're most likely going to run out of time if there's any type of non-traditional win condition. And so don't worry too much about them. I think if you keep it simple, stupid, like the KISS methodology, that's a very strong win strategy. Then we have Historic, which is really wonky, I think. It's an ability that creatures have that is only triggered when either you play an enchantment, a legendary creature, or a legendary sorcery. So, for example, in Sarah's Disciple, it's a 2-mana, 2/1/1 flying with first strike. Fine, I don't know, it's okay. But whenever you cast a historic spell, which is one of any of the 3 I mentioned before, Sarah's Disciple gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it becomes a 2/2 flyer. That's okay. It's not very good. I wouldn't play that card probably. But again, if you need evasion, maybe. But the fact that it only becomes a 2/2 flyer isn't that hot, especially since you're paying 2 mana for it, at least in my opinion. The other ability that you need to understand is Kicker. This one is very simple, very straightforward. So a creature like the Academy Drake, which is a 3-mana 2/2 flyer that has Kicker of 4 colorless mana. It will always tell you what the kicker is. So if it's a 2/2, if it was kicked, which means if you cast it for 7, basically, it enters the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it. So if you pay 7 mana, you get a 4/4 flyer. Kicker is not a bad ability from a value standpoint. Always consider your draws. If they can have value early, like a 3-mana 2/2 flyer is decent early, but if you draw this in turn 7 or 8 of the game, a 2/2 flyer isn't exactly that great. But if you can kick it and now you have a 4/4 flyer, that's pretty spicy. If you look at like Keldon Overseer, this is a 3-mana 3/1 with a kicker of 3 and a red, but it also has haste. And if it enters the battlefield, if you kicked it, gain control of target creature till end of turn, untap that creature, gains haste till end of turn. So it's like for 3 mana, you get a 3/1 creature with haste. For 7 mana, you get to cast Active Treason and a 3-mana 3/1 with haste. So if you're playing an aggressive deck, late game, this could be the difference in the game. So I think of the cards I'm looking for pre-release, I think I'm looking at cards with Kicker first, because again, for the reasons mentioned before, you have early value, you have late value. These are good things when you're playing sealed. Another type of, mechanic you need to consider is the legendary sorceries. Something like Urza's Ruinous Blast, a 5-mana legendary sorcery that says, and by the way, you can only cast legendary sorcery if you control a legendary creature or a planeswalker. So this is another way to increase the cost. But what you want to be careful about overvaluing these cards is if you're reading the ability and you think, damn, that's a pretty good ability, like exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary, that's a game win, that's a win condition, right? But sitting with this card in your hand, if you're not playing enough legendary creature types, or if you happen to have a planeswalker, which nobody can really count on because it's a mythic, you're going to sit with this card in your hand. You literally can't cast it. So be careful about playing too many legendary sorceries. And then kind of a boring ability we have is Hexproof From. You can't really worry about this too much because you don't know the color your opponent is playing. So, for example, on a card like Knight of Grace, you have a 2-mana 2/2 with First Strike. By the way, this is a very good card. Very good. And it also has Hexproof from black, and Knight of Grace gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a black permanent. So think of this as an added bonus. You never really know. You can kind of guess. But I would say with the Hexproof from ability and the extra add-on it might have, what you have to ask yourself is, does this creature stand on its own? And if it stands on its own as a playable, great. But don't count on that extra spice triggering at any moment. Outside of that, certain things to keep in mind, of course, don't stink when you go to pre-release. Put on deodorant, wear a belt, take a shower, don't be a slob. Be considerate of your local game store owner who is probably going to be working 24 or 72 hours straight, getting minimal sleep. And take the advantage to meet the opportunity to meet new people. Meeting new people at each pre-release, I think, is really important. And not putting too much stock into winning, but having fun and hoping for good pulls is always good. And I think pre-release is something that not a lot of people really attend. But it's something more people should. A lot of times people talk to me and they'll say like, I'm kind of afraid to attend pre-release. I don't really want to. I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. Trust me, nobody cares. And it's a great opportunity to support your local game store and open the cards a little early. Now with Dominaria, we actually, if you so choose, you can buy a booster box of Dominaria at pre-release, which is awesome. If you're like me and either can't attend or banned for life with no possibility of appeal from playing Magic the Gathering, you can come to my stream Friday night on pre-release Friday, and I will be hosting a pre-release where I open a pre-release kit, build my deck, and have my own little sad pre-release, but it'll be a couple hundred people strong, so keep an eye out for that. On Friday, I'll have a Dominaria booster box opening for you that day as well, the pre-release kit opening, the Planeswalker decks. Everything will be as normal. I'm going to try to go back to, I should have covered the last couple of pre-releases, and I apologize for that. I know a lot of people depend on me for help, but go to pre-release if you can. Have a lot of fun. If you want, again, to look at individual cards, then I think MTG Degree does a good job in his video, which I'll link in the description below. Thanks for watching this, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to be notified the next time I upload a video, make sure you subscribe and take a moment to turn on notifications. If you want to support the cause of this channel, it survives because of the amazing generosity of those that choose to back me on Maker Support. The link is in the description, and hopefully you'll consider backing today.